Welcome to the Teens Behind the Scenes webinar series. My name is Leanne Dempsey, and Teens Behind the Scenes is a program of the National Theater Foundation dedicated to providing teens in the Washington, D.C. area with access to Broadway touring productions and professional insight into performing arts careers. In this series, we interview theater professionals to learn more about what they do, how they do it, and how they got where they are. So joining me today is Amith Chandrashaker. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Very happy, very excited to participate.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. And Amith, you are a professional lighting designer. So everyone listening out there, we're going to be diving into just what is a lighting designer? What is that career like? And I will also tell you all, you guys are really lucky to have Amith today because Amith's work is absolutely beautiful. I encourage you to please check out Amith's work online as well as we jump in. So Amith, I usually like to start our interview, and the kids actually ask us to start the interview with the question, what brought you here to lighting design? And more specifically, what inspired you to do lighting design? Is it a teacher that you discovered? Did you go see a show and was like, wow, was there like a spark moment for you when you were just starting out or just discovering this thing?
That's a great question. I got into it I got into theater, I should say first. My parents immigrated from India and I was born in New York in Brooklyn. And my parents worked a lot, and so our de facto babysitter, our entertainment was television, to be honest with you. So
Yeah.
I fell in love with telling stories at a very young age. We were growing up, and my dad was really into Bollywood and sort of the cultural things, cultural entertainment in that way. And so we honestly just grew up sort of really loving telling stories, and I knew that I wanted to that was a big interest of mine. And when I got to, and then we moved from New York to New Jersey, and there was no the closest thing that we had was the theater class. So I took a theater class to see what this thing is like in my freshman year of high school. And I just fell in love with what storytelling was and how it works, especially live. And I remember I was assigned to work on the lighting crew for the first show, which was Raising the Sun in my freshman year of high school in New Jersey. And, running the show and doing the show every day, I just sort of fell in love with this idea, or what I fell in love with was how how lighting sort of told the story in a parallel way. Lighting design is sort of it's kind of like editing. You tell sort of you tell the audience what to look at.
Yeah.
Through color and then through intensity, how bright something is, and through composition, you tell people what to look at, how to feel, or how to sort of drink in the scene that's in front of them.
Yeah.
And so when I was working on this production in high school, I just fell in love with sort of what that is. And then I remember later when I went to college and things like that, I was like, oh, actually, one of the things that I really loved about it, or what I loved about it, is it became this nexus of a lot of interest for me. To be a lighting designer, you have to sort of be a dramaturg, you have to be into English. To be any designer, you have to sort of be into history. You're reading about plays and context. To be a lighting designer, you have to be into technology, or have some sort of you're creating art, or you're creating a situation through technological means. And so it became this crossroads of a lot of things that I'm interested in, and how to express and tell a story.
Yeah, I mean, it's so cool, and it's so cool that you got your start just in your high school theater program, which is many of our listeners have the
Oh,
same.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say, if we're thinking about, the tools that you're using as a lighting designer, obviously in the title we have lighting. But what would you say are like the tools for a lighting designer? In the sense, would you say it's like color and knowing the different types of lights, gobos? Like, what is your lighting design playground? What are those things that
Oh,
you're
yeah.
learning and you grew up learning about?
I mean, for me, a lot of it is color. There's these sort of qualities of lights or properties, like which is intensity, how bright something is,
Mm-hmm.
angle of the light, uh,
Yeah.
sort of the revelation of form. What is the shadow? What is not the shadow?
Mm,
Color is, in color, those are like sort of the big things that are the tools or things that we can manipulate. And then, through that, there's different types of lighting instruments and different types
yeah,
of items that you can use to, you know, make the light in the space
yeah.
appear the way you want it. But really, it's how do you manipulate and how do you play with the angle and the shadow and the color that sort of really, that I find it like that's the painting part of it, which I find really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think like all of the creative, all of the creative team, everybody has like their own tools. And I always think it's really cool to learn like, what are the designers thinking about? Oh, we're thinking about color. One of the things that jumps out to me, like you just said, it was revelation
Of form, like what is the shadow,
form.
like when the light hits something that creates a texture of light and things like
That
things like
seems
that. Yeah,
so cool. I'm, you know why? Because I'm thinking of like mood, like horror
hmm
and like mystery and like how
absolutely.
film noir, like those styles have all kinds of use of shadow. And I didn't even realize that like, there's a way to build that. You know what I mean? We just take it for granted when we watch it because we're just
Mhm.
like, wow, that stage looks so beautiful. But
Yeah.
it's you and creators like you who are making this beautiful work. Like,
Well,
absolutely.
ideally, everything is working in concert and all as one, so it's all sort of like you can't
Mhm.
really separate like the lighting and the scenery and the acting. You're all just trying to create a moment or try to find a unified,
Yeah.
cohesive thing that everything is like set up to sort of allow the play or the musical or the opera or the dance to sort of work its magic.
Yeah. And so, can you walk us through your creative process? Does a director contact you and say, hey, there's a piece that we'd love for you to work on? And then do you first read the piece? What is that? How do we
Yeah.
get that beautiful moment on stage?
Yeah, usually, a director or a theater company will reach out and say, we have this piece that we're interested in having your take on or your point of view on the work that you do would be really great for this piece. And then, I usually, if it's a new piece, well, either way, I'll read the play or read the
Yeah.
piece or watch a video of the dance or something. And then
Yeah.
if it's a new director I haven't worked with before, we'll have a meeting and just chat just to make sure, we're sort of seeing things the same way and we're sort of gelling. If it's a director I've worked with before, then it's, we already have that familiarity. So usually then after that, then we go through what I call a pre-production and design process, which is, let's say this starts about 9 months or maybe even a year before the show opens, where we're
Yes.
meeting
Wow.
with the director, I'm meeting with the set designer, the set designer, costume designer, myself, the sound designer, the director. We're all meeting either as a group or individually with the director and just trying to create and discussing like, what are all the possibilities of the world? What do we want this piece to say? How do we want
Mhm.
the lighting to support our point of view of the piece,
Mhm.
or to say certain things, or conjure certain things, or to support the piece in a certain way. And the set's doing the same thing, and the costume's doing the same thing. And that's usually like a 6-month process. And
Yeah.
then we get into, and then in that process, after sort of meetings about what we think everything wants to be, then I'll do a drafting and a design packet where
Yeah.
like we'll select, oh, we'll put this light at this position with this angle and this colored gel to do the things we need it to do. And then we'll draft it. Usually it's me and a team, one or two assistants, depending on how big the show is.
Mhm.
And then we'll draft everything and we'll make up supporting paperwork that we then give to the theater company. So their
Mhm.
production team, usually a production electrician or a master electrician, that's what they're called, but they're the ones who like figure out the circuiting and the hanging of the
Mhm.
lights and the budgeting. And then so they do the actual sort of physical installation of where we want the lights.
Yeah.
Then we have focus where we then we come in for a day or two and we point all the lights in the right place. And then
Mhm.
we enter production, which is what I called it, which is most people call the technical rehearsal period, where now that everybody's in the room together in the theater, the actors, the director, choreographers, all the designers, and we're like sort of moving through the piece over a few days.
Mhm.
And we're like writing the light cues, setting the
Mhm.
sound cues, working on the timing and things like that. So everything is coming together
Yeah.
in this technical rehearsal period. And then after that, you're sort of building toward sort of doing run throughs and doing preview performances and just running the show to make sure that it's functioning and working. And if like, oh, something's not working, maybe we'll change this idea. Or like, oh, this color's not great, let's change it, or the costume's not the right one for the character, they'll change that. And so you're reacting to sort of what you're seeing now that you're doing sort of run throughs of it, although, and just building it and refining it, refining it till you get to opening.
Yeah. And so like when you mentioned the draft of, what colors and things that you're going to be sending over to the production team and the master electrician and so forth to actually set up for you, how do you draft that? Are you someone who do you collage at all? Do you use any kind of like creative, like almost like visual before you actually do the technical
Yeah,
element?
usually what I find really helpful is usually the set designer will make a model and I sort of study the model. I'll put lights in the model just to see like, oh, what shapes does it do? Oh, what color does it do this? We usually get a lot of paint samples and clothing samples from costume designers, and we're like, oh, what does it look like under this gel? Oh, I know I want it to be sort of blue, but like, oh, what is this blue versus this blue versus this blue? We're very lucky that there's so many different shades of blue there. Like you're just trying to find what is the right one that's the emotional state of the piece that also like works well with the paint of the set, that works well with the costume. So you're just trying to figure all those things out.
Yeah, so it really does seem like the lighting designer, I mean, obviously everyone, but it really looks like the lighting designer, you're really building off of all of the movements of the other designers as well. You're kind of taking pieces from what their work is doing so that, because you're lighting it all up, and it makes so much sense that you're living in the world of the model, but you're also looking at the texture and the materials of the costumes, and I guess also keeping the integrity of the costume, right? If the costume's supposed to look white on stage, you don't want it to turn out looking purple or something.
No, exactly.
I'm sure that is one of the challenges that comes with lighting design. Would you say that there's some challenges when it comes to once you get in that space? What is something that you have experienced where you're like, oh, okay, well, this is a little harder than we thought.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that is sort of I find exciting about it is we're the last to create. So like the set is designed months in advance so that somebody can build it. And the costumes are designed months in advance so that somebody can build it or shop it. But usually those designs are sort of finalized or figured out 80%, 90% by the time first rehearsal starts. And sort of we figure out where the lights want to go, but we're not actually painting and we're not actually sketching and putting it together till we have all the elements the actors were in tech. So we're, it's a little bit like you have to be fluid about it. It's like, oh, I thought this color worked really well with the costume, but it's actually kind of weird on the costume. Let's change the color, or like, oh, the way that we thought the texture in the set would work is not, for X, Y, and Z reasons, not as textured as we want. How can we enhance that, and how can we fix that? So by being the sort of the final piece in the process that sort of brings everything together, you sort of have to be very fluid and adapt to sort of what you're seeing and what you're not seeing. And, most companies won't spend the money to repaint the whole set or rebuild the whole costume. Or let's say, for whatever reason, let's say like, oh, we want to change sort of the way it feels. Like that's on lighting in a lot of ways because you're the most reactive and because you're the most adaptable. But, oh, we can change the color of the lighting. Oh, that's a lot easier. Let's see what that looks like. And sort of, you have a little bit more say on the final product because it is malleable at that point.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm sure you're a very humble human being, but I'm going to brag on you for a second because you have worked on a number of notable pieces that a lot of us are aware of. But I really want to point out, well, one, because I literally just saw it on the Tonys, and one that I got to see, which is you had the wonderful opportunity to work on Merrily We Roll Along, which is currently on Broadway, starring a number of wonderful actors, including Daniel Radcliffe, and then also the national tour of Peter Pan, which is in a totally different world than Merrily We Roll Along. Can you share some insights into the unique lighting challenges or creative decisions that you faced with these shows? Because I will say, looking at Merrily and then looking at Peter Pan seems to be, it's almost, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they look like they need two different types of technique, because Peter Pan is a darker, like there's nighttime, like there's a lot of nighttime in it. And it's like, I always am curious about lighting designers and creating the nighttime, but you're putting light in it, which I'm assuming it has something to do with the revelation. Come on, y'all. We're going to learn this vocabulary phrase today. Revelation of
Form.
Form, right. I mean, I'm assuming there's got to be something with that in Peter Pan. And then we go to Merrily. We're working with humor. We're working with so much a huge like a musical on on Broadway. Lighting, like the mood is very different. So I'm just curious about any insight or maybe a cool memory of building for Merrily and for Peter Pan.
Oh,
And you
sure.
can start wherever you
I
want.
mean, I approach every project is unique and distinct in their own way. Um,
Yeah.
and primarily, we're trying to it's a story told backwards. It's a story told like at the basically the end of a relationship, and it goes backwards in time to the beginning of this relationship between these three friends.
Yeah.
And sort of one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that we kept the timeline of the show pretty clear, but also because it's written episodically, there's like a moment in this time, a moment in this time, a moment in this time to find a way that they all weave together in some commonality.
Yeah.
And um and Peter Pan, that's just a fun show that we wanted to sort of like that's been rewritten or adapted by Larissa Fassors. So it's trying
Mhm.
to so it's
Yeah.
having like a second life, a more contemporary vibe to a more contemporary take on it. So how
Mhm.
do we sort of keep it in it? How do we acknowledge classical structure, but also sort of modernize it at the same time?
Mhm.
And I think that some of the challenge with Merrily was how do you, that episodic structure, how do you create distinctions in timelines
Yeah.
from late 1950s to the middle of the 1970s in a single place? Like it was
Mhm.
set. So lighting had to do a lot to sort of tell us 1970s, 1960s, TV studio, apartment and things like that. So that was, a challenge but a fun challenge to try to do.
Yeah.
Peter Pan, like you said, a lot of it takes place at night, and and it's a fun piece. So you're like trying to create night, but you also want to make sure it has that buoyancy and that brightness and that love. You want to see the kids, you want to see them have fun, and there's some great work being done by the performers. So you want to make sure that sort of you're able to create the information that's needed in the situation, but also sort of give it that buoyancy.
Yeah.
Peace, love, the piece needs.
Yeah, because you have a lot of in Peter Pan, there's so many other lights, if that makes sense. We have like there's Tinkerbell, and then we have the infamous Peter Pan shadow, right? So we're there's other like things that are light like in there.
Hmm.
Um, and then you have this like massive use of projection that's used so amazingly in the show. And so do you have to adjust to projection like light, like a screen, or is there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was really important to David, the production designer, and I was making sure it all felt related. So whatever colors he was interested in, I tried to
Mm,
mimic with the lighting. Whatever colors I was doing, he was trying to build into the video, so it all felt like one location, one
yeah,
world.
yeah.
And that was a constant conversation back and forth of like, oh, like this is the night sky for the pirate ship. Oh, maybe make sure that I have those blues, so it feels like the moonlight is the same moonlight that's lighting them and giving the right context.
Yeah, and this is really, seems really small, but I thought it was really cool with Peter Pan set of when the babysitter comes in and the door opens, you can
Oh yeah,
tell the hallway that the babysitter's coming from. This kind of like this
the
glow that's
door
happening at
opens
the
and all that.
door.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like a small detail, but like it's what makes, it's the craft, right? Of not overlooking any small lighting detail. I'm sure in your everyday you see all kinds of lighting. I'm sure. And I feel like as time goes by, lighting's getting more and more interesting. I would assume with lights from phones versus the light from the computer versus the
Mhm.
lights from, I mean, I don't know. I'm really, really interested to see what, this your career actually, all the different things you get to play with in like 10 years from
I
now.
know it's and technology moves so fast that we're living in this world of LEDs and color changing lights that
Yeah.
who knows what it will be in 10, 15 years, this new thing that will be an exciting tool in our way we work and the way we tell our stories.
Yeah, how do you keep up with that? Like, how do you keep up with the massive like change and rapid change of technology? Do you check study? Do you like go to different workshops? Like, how does
Yeah, a bit of both. I mean, I think if you're interested in something, you're gonna always be sort of
yeah.
checking it out. Um, So there's a little bit of that, and there's a lot of really great companies that keep us, like, oh, we have this new product, or that we love you to check out, and
Oh,
and
cool.
honest, and seeing other, I see a lot of theater.
Yeah.
Uh, it really is a passion of mine to, it's not just a job; it's sort of a lifestyle, and I see a lot of my friends' work. I see a lot of work in DMV area, up in
Yeah.
New York, and things like that. And I see what people are up to. I see what they're using. I see how they're approaching things. And sort of like that's been a bit very informative.
Yeah. And it seems like not only the versatility with technology, but there's also different ways of lighting. And correct me if I'm wrong, different ways of lighting different types of performances, because you work not only in musicals, you do dramatic plays, you do operas, you do dance concert style. I mean, do you find that all of them are, just like you said earlier, it's just unique to every single thing? Or will you say, lighting dancers is very different from doing musical? Do you see, I mean, there's dancers in musicals as well, but is there differences in the genres as you jump back and forth?
I think that there are some differences in genres, but there's some. I mean, I think it's more creator. I follow more of the creator and what they're interested in.
Yeah.
You have wonderful choreographers like Camille Brown, who started in modern dance or contemporary dance, I should say, who now does Broadway musicals.
Yes.
And she brings some of that energy and that viewpoint into the
Mm.
musical, but
Mhm.
it also inherently is a Broadway musical and it has certain demands around that. So I
Yeah.
think this is to say that it really just depends on the creator and the vibe or what the show's going for. And
Yeah.
that I find is really more sort of what drives me. I mean, you could do a play in an operatic fashion, or you can do an opera in like sort of like a, a dance fashion. Um, there are some rules, or there are some sort of structural things that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
But sort of what I've been very lucky about by working in all these different mediums is that uh I'm able to sort of move back and forth. I'm like, oh, it just depends on what the creator is. Not There's no real recipe on how we do it. It's just like, what are we aiming for? Oh, maybe it needs this idea that is not inherent in dramatic theater. It needs
Yeah.
something else, from a different medium, that, well, let's just bring it in.
Yeah. Well, I will say, before we get to our infamous question of what is your advice for the teams listening in today, you're bringing up something really interesting, and I think we should jump into real quick, which is viewpoint, right? You just mentioned like Camille Brown, and you're like, she brings this like viewpoint into her work. My question for you is, for you, Amith, what would you say is your viewpoint? What is unique, because and why is that important? Because I think young people should know, the goal is not to be like someone else. It's to really discover your own perspective and what you bring to the work. So I'm just really curious of like, how do you describe your viewpoint, or how do you feel like you discovered it, to help out our teams that are listening?
One of the things about being in the theater or opera or dance is that it is a collaborative
Mm,
field.
yeah.
Um, I work with the set designer, I work with costume designer, I work for the director or with the director, I work for the
Mm,
choreographer with the choreographer. Ultimately, but even then, they're sort of like they're realizing what the writer has written. So
yeah.
we're all part of sort of building something that might have started with an individual sort of initial
Mhm.
question or investigation when they wrote it or when they decided to make a dance about it. But that person has decided to bring in a team of people
Mhm.
who bring their viewpoints or bring their aesthetic in
Yeah.
uh, to help tell the story for one reason or the other. They
Yeah.
like aesthetic, they like the way they work, they think that they'd be right fit for this. And I think that sort of I think my viewpoint is hard to describe, because I think that you know, there's certain things that I like. Like I like the lighting. I like, highly textured things. I like
Yeah.
from different certain angles and things like that. I like sort of the way that, at the same time, as much as I like doing like big splash musical, I like sort of like how does like a still life work, and
Yeah.
lighting in a still life and things like that. I think that people sort of like, oh, that's your I mean, my advice for people would be find what you like, or the work you like to do, or the things that you find interesting. That's
Mhm.
your aesthetic, that's your style, and
Yeah.
don't be necessarily shy about it, and really, sort of like work through that and work on it and sort of refine that, because there's, as much as there's like, there's a lot of designers out there whose aesthetics I think are really great, but maybe that's not my aesthetic. Like I wore this blue shirt and somebody be like, I would never wear a blue shirt.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
you have to be like, well, this is my favorite color. I like this
Like,
shirt. I'm gonna
oh,
wear this shirt. Yeah. And then there's gonna be people like, yeah, I like that, and let's do that.
yeah.
And I think you have to sort of like, it takes a little while to figure it out, but if you're something you're interested in and something that you're, stylistically or aesthetically, sure, just go with it. There's always going to be an audience for that. There's a lot of work out there, and you just have to lean into sort of what you are interested in and what your aesthetic is.
Yeah, I love great advice. Thank you so much. And I will say, just like reviewing the work on your website, I mean, we just learned revelation of form today, so I got a lot more studying.
Yeah.
But I will say that everyone looks stunning under your lighting. Like everyone is extremely captivating. The face of everyone is like, I don't know, it's the human form pops out of your work. And I think that that's very, very cool. It's almost looks effortless, which I know it's not. But it looks effortless. So it's stunning. I will say that. And there's something about humanness and authenticity and truth that's in your work. And there is the revelation of form. I think we're hitting on something.
Getting it.
For sure. Well, I could talk to you all day, but I do want to make sure that we do get to one of the questions that the teens always want to know, which is very simple. What is any advice that you would give a teen who is aspiring to be a lighting designer?
I would say that, an old professor of mine in my graduate school would say, you don't really know you're going to be a lighting designer until you start doing it. And I think that's a little bit about getting your hands dirty or whatever, but start working on it in a high school, start working on it in your community theater, start working in whatever community you have that does theater. And I think that there's a practical education of like, oh, I really enjoy this. Oh, let me see how the light, it's playing around with it, like painters just paint, they mix paint and they start going, if you want to move, you want to be a choreographer, you start doing it in your bedroom, and it's that sort of thing. It's like, you have to just start doing it, and then wherever it leads you is wherever it leads you. But if you start doing it and you still enjoy, and you're enjoying it and you're liking it, keep going further. And I will say that there's a lot of it's a very warm community, the theater design community.
Right?
And I think that means that, like, what that means to me is like, if you're interested and you're passionate about it, email people that your names you see, reach out to just to observe and to talk more. Like, we are all sort of excited, as you mentioned, I teach at the University of Maryland, and teaching is a very passionate thing for me, because I sort of got to where I am because of really wonderful mentors and educators. And reach out, look, if you're really interested in it, and if you've played with it and experimented with it, take the next step, start talking to people and see, and observing and watching, and keep pushing at it, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on this web series. We are always so thankful to have amazing artists and designers like you to join us. So I'm going to say to everyone, thank you for listening in, and we hope that you check us out again at another episode for our Teens Behind the Scenes web series. Bye, everybody.